everybody. Welcome to Camel City Chat, and I am here with someone that I've wanted to have on for a long time. You were on Real Estate Radio a couple times. Yep. We have a. Your wife taught my daughter. I mean, we've been around each other.
Our ships have passed.
Our ships have passed.
Several times.
We're friends. I think we can say we're friends. I just always. When we did Real Estate Radio, I loved having you on because we'd talk about this or that, and I got to write this thing down or else I'm going to forget it. Everybody knows I have ADD. But we'd have you come on and talk about how to, deal with, the Thanksgiving holiday and stuff like that. We're getting close to Thanksgiving, so this is kind of cool that you're on here.
Yep.
We can debate whether or not Brock's should make a Thanksgiving dinner candy corn. We'll get to that. But folks, it's the food editor. That's right. It's Michael Hastings is joining us for Camel City Chat, and thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's so awesome you're here because we've talked about it for a while, and I know you've been slammed, and so then once I got you locked in, I'm like, oh, okay, you're not changing. So, Michael, when everyone comes on the show, we ask those questions, and there's 3 to 5 questions based on time. The first 3 we always ask, and that is, where are you from?
Okay.
And how long have you been in Winston-Salem?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Maryland.
Okay.
Around Baltimore, or between Baltimore and D.C. actually, and I actually came down here as an 18-year-old to go to school, to go to Wake Forest.
Okay.
That's how I first came to Winston-Salem, and I just fell in love with it. At that age, it was probably more the weather than anything else that drew me.
Right.
I just love the weather, still do. But after school, I stayed.
Right.
So I have pretty much been here most of my adult life now, going on more than 30 years.
So where did you meet the best thing that ever happened to you? Because, you like me married up. So where did you meet Miss Betty?
My wife and I, we met through mutual friends. She was a very good, in Charlotte. We actually met in Charlotte at a wedding, at a friend's wedding. So her good friend was getting married to a friend of mine, and so we each got invited to the wedding, and we literally met at the reception. So
2 kids later, great kids. We also, love of animals and pets, and your wife goes and feeds the animals at the children's home, and has done that for years, and and brags about your cooking. So we're going to hear more about that. So first question, and we got that. Now the second question is, and you are allowed to take the mayor's approach because you got to be careful with your job on this, and that is, what is your favorite place to eat in and around Winston-Salem?
Yeah, and
start the list, right? Do we scroll through?
So there's a 2-part honest answers.
Okay.
One is I really don't have a single favorite.
Right.
And 2, if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
Right. Or you would, but then you'd have to, of course, eliminate the video and all that stuff.
Yeah, so, I don't want to play favorites in town. There's lots of good places to eat in town. And honestly, you can go to X, Y, and Z restaurant and determine your favorite just as well as I can. I might know a little bit more about food and cooking than you do, but that doesn't mean that you don't know what you like, right? So everybody can kind of suss it out on their own, and you kind of see that in the stories I write. Where I write about the stories, I let the restaurants tell their story. I tell people what the restaurant is about, where it is, what they serve, who owns it, where they're coming from, how much it costs, whether you can get a drink there, those kinds of things. I give everybody all the information, and then people can kind of go make up their own mind about how they like the food. Restaurant reviews, don't hold the same place in the world as they used to. Not to say that there's anything wrong with them or they're not valid, but social media has really changed the game on that.
Well, and I think that, especially with you, everyone's experience is different, as you said to me.
Right.
And by the way, the follow-up question is, where the last place you have eaten out at a restaurant? But see, I don't ask that question to you because you're not going to answer that either. And why would he? This is a person that is, you actually are unique to me because when I first met you, I'm like, oh, are you a food critic? And you're like, no, I'm not a food critic. I mean, you're like a liaison. I mean, to me, one of the things that's so great about what you do is you cry with them when there's a shutter, you cheer with them when there's an opening, and then you try and explain to people why this could be something that might interest you.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
and you don't trash people.
No,
Right.
I don't. I'm not in the business of trashing people. I'm in business of spreading the word, sharing the news, giving people the information. And I will tell you another reason why I don't give my opinions about restaurants is, although I have visited pretty much every restaurant in town, a lot of my visits are not normal customer visits. In other words, they either know, even if I'm just going as a paying customer, they may know I'm coming. They may spot me. They may give me a little extra attention. Or also, a lot of times I'm going to interview them, and they're going to make a couple dishes that we're going to photograph for an article. But the restaurant isn't open when I go there.
Right.
So I'm not getting. A lot of times, I really couldn't tell you about how the service is because I didn't really get regular service. But and even the food, again, the chef was there. He had no distractions, didn't have any other orders, didn't have a dining room full of people. He or she was just making the dish for us to take some photographs for the purposes of an article. So so that necessarily isn't. You can't judge the restaurants a normal customer experience.
Well, you have zero
that way.
anonymity.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no
So-
way. Because when you walk in, I mean, a lot of these people, you were there with them when they opened the restaurant.
Right.
People know who you are. They see your
Yeah.
picture, et cetera.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's,
And sometimes what I'm getting really isn't as good as what you're getting because it may be the first it may be the first week and they're kind of figuring it out, and they're making it as best they can and making we're taking photographs of it and all that, but it'll be better next week after they've had a week's practice with a new dish.
And that was something crazy to me when we had Peyton Smith on, and we're talking to him, and we're standing, and there's the fire and everything. He goes, the pizza you get today is different than the pizza you get on Sunday.
Oh yeah.
The oven's had a chance to do this.
Yeah.
It's had a chance to
Yeah.
do this. We've mastered this. I mean, they're all good pizzas, John, but there's just something different about it. And I mean, no, you have no anonymity, and that's when if I own a restaurant and see you coming in, they're gonna trip over themselves, because he could be writing about us. So that's
right.
What do you guys like to do? I mean, I know you're a musician. So what are things that you like to do in and around Winston-Salem?
Well, I will tell you, food and music are my two big interests. So, I'm either playing music, listening to music, eating food, cooking food, writing about food.
Are you a vinyl guy?
Yeah, I still have a huge number of vinyl. I will say that, day to day, it's so much easier, day to day listening, it's so much easier to do it digitally, especially, if I'm out and about or whatever. But yeah, I still have a turntable. I still have tons of vinyl.
But a nice glass of wine and the turntable going on a Friday evening is nice.
Absolutely.
You're welcome because you go home and do that tonight now that we talked about it.
Yeah, and and for music, I've been really loving discovering, some streaming service. I would never ever stop buying, but it is fun discovering some streaming services and some Facebook music groups too. We're all, people are always posting things about some favorite band they like, some favorite track they like, and discovering new music. So I have a lot of fun doing that. And, just maybe spend an hour after dinner just kind of scrolling through, finding some new music to listen to.
So you said you're from Maryland.
Yep.
What are the ingredients in the perfect crab cake?
Not much.
Right.
Not
I understand
much.
that. It's hardly anything, is it?
Yeah. So
it's meat, a little bit of bread, and a binder?
Yeah, a little bit of egg, usually a little bit of egg, a little bit of mayonnaise, and a little bit of cracker crumbs.
Right.
And some Old Bay.
Right.
Seasoning, and that's pretty much it. So not much. The less the better.
So you leave Maryland, you come to Wake Forest.
Right.
All right. We got two paths. One is shorter for me, and that's the musician side of things, because really that's not your profession. Your profession
Right.
is this. So let's take the shorter path. When did you start playing music?
Gosh, I got a guitar when I was 15. We of course,
Was it to
of
meet
course,
girls?
I actually know. I just really like to play.
Right.
I guess like most kids, in my era, we had piano lessons. I was never great at that, but I had a few years of piano lessons. Can find my way around a piano, and then got a guitar maybe when I was 15,
Right.
something like that, and started. Just started playing at home mostly, and started writing really bad poetry. And then I realized, oh, well, if you can write poetry, that you can write lyrics. And so then I started playing around with writing songs, and did that badly for a long time too. And slowly, it just something. For a long time, I never played in public really. Right. I remember playing once in public in high school. There was we had some project for English class, and I think I wrote a song for the project and performed the song in class, and that was about the extent of it, and maybe played with a few friends here and there in high school, but mainly didn't play out in public for years and years and years and years, and then. Just it just kind of gradually happens where you would play at parties and jam with friends, and then then I'd go out and do. But I never was like touring in a rock band or anything like that. I was mainly like a coffee house guy.
Right, I was going to say, because pre-pandemic you were at Mike Coe's place. You always would play there, and then the other was you did didn't you do Trade Street on a corner at one time too?
Yeah. So every once in a while I would busk. Even this spring after I got vaccinated, when Trade Street they were doing one of the streetery things, right. I went out and busked. Like I said, I want to say that was May.
Right.
So yeah, I've done that. Coffee house. So I've got electric guitar, and sometimes I like to plug in and get loud stuff. But I'm mainly an acoustic guitar person. I like acoustic guitars. I'm used to doing. I used to have a friend. We used to do duo gigs, but lately, I've been doing solo acoustic guitar kind of stuff.
I think I saw you one time on Facebook Live. You did a broadcast on Facebook Live. Or something.
Yeah, a couple times I've done. I experimented with Facebook. I still haven't got that down yet.
I'll tell you, it's really interesting. We had Martha on, but I also have a friend from my wife had a friend from school, and he was in Nashville, and I mean they there's a little tip thing there and all that kind of stuff, and he would Facebook Live, and then people from his hometown would watch him from. Kansas and stuff, and I mean that's a big thing of broadcasting that.
And in the pandemic, it became really popular, and there are a lot of I know a lot of musicians in town who all of a sudden could make no money last spring when all the clubs were closed. They would do a Friday night concert from their living room or their porch or whatever, and they'd. They would put up their Venmo account, flash their Venmo account, and people could make a donation, and so that was kind of that was great. It was a great way for musicians to keep their chops up, I think, and keep their chops up, keep their morale up, and also for fans, and even and then a lot of big musicians ended up doing this, even today I think Lyle Lovett does like one every 2 weeks or something.
We had an event for realtors for the Realtor Political Action Committee, the Realtor Party. It's Keith Urban did it from Australia.
Yeah,
for us. So that was really cool.
I'm pretty sure Bob Dylan has done a couple. Most of the major acts have done a couple streaming concerts, and I think that's great.
Well, keep it up.
Yeah.
But guess what? Stabler's going to hit us if we don't take a break. We're going to take our break.
Okay.
Right? And then, since we've talked about musicians now, we're going to talk about what I want to talk about. And, of course, I did not eat before you got here, which makes me mad. But we're going to talk about food and all that stuff. We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Camel City Chat. And I'm here with Michael Hastings. Michael, of course, is the food editor. Is that what we call it officially?
Food editor
for the Winston Salem Journal. All right.
Yep.
And we've talked about your family. We've talked about where to eat and all that stuff without saying where to eat. He told me during the break. I can't believe you guys weren't here. But then now let's talk about this. So you can see my love of food.
Mm-hmm.
You're a little skinny punk. I'm just kidding. Where did your love of food originate? I mean, it had to start with someone or something or whatever.
Yeah, well, it started with my mother and my grandmother,
Right.
who are great cooks. And when
I remember this.
when I was young, we lived, a few minutes from my grandparents' house. So every Sunday, we spent, we went over there. Usually hung out in the afternoon and then had Sunday dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So it was usually my grandparents, our family, and then my uncle and his family, my cousins. So that was the Sunday ritual. So I grew up, and so part of that ritual too was, the kids have to, were called in to snip the green beans, or my granddad had a garden, so we would go out and pick the blueberries off his blueberry bush, or he had cherries, he had peaches, and
You were sous chefs.
yeah, we were the Cape. We were on KP, as it were, and so that and both my mom and grandmother were great cooks, and they eventually opened a restaurant. Basically what you would call a home cook and diner kind of restaurant. Nothing fancy whatsoever. It was mainly just a lunch spot in a little town in Maryland. And but my mom ended up doing what I did. She taught cooking classes. She wrote cooking columns for the paper in Annapolis, and for a while. And so I just grew up around that, and kind of soaked it in.
What nationality were you guys was this Italian dinners, or what?
No, my family background is pretty waspish. So no, my grandmother's standard dinner was roast beef and gravy,
Okay.
mashed potatoes, green beans. That was kind of the standard. Although in summer she would make fried chicken,
Right.
and she would vary it here and there. But most of the time we went over for Sunday, we knew we were getting roast beef.
Right.
That's what she made. So kind of all American comfort food, really. You mentioned crabs. Obviously, we'd get steamed crabs with corn on the cob was a big popular summer thing. But I grew up eating just all American fried food. My mom used to make me one of my favorite breakfasts. She would make soft-boiled eggs with toast. Mm-hmm. And she would make toast, butter the toast, and chop it up, and then you'd break the soft eggs. So she'd scoop out the soft-boiled eggs and stir up the toasted soft-boiled eggs all in one bowl together. I love that. Mm-hmm. But just really nothing, I grew up not eating fancy, but eating well.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So when did you know, obviously wake, you leave. When did you say, hey, I can write and, maybe I ought to do this? How did that happen?
It was a real gradual evolution in my gradual revelation, if you will. So I majored in English at Wake. Actually, I started majoring in accounting at Wake because I was always decent at numbers. And I think my dad thought, hey, this will be a good.
Got the green thing.
This will be a good solid career.
Right.
Accountants are never out of work, and I started down that path and realized that it wasn't me, and so then I changed, and I made the switch early enough that I was still able to finish in 4 years. It didn't slow me down or anything like that. But so I majored in English. Because I'd always loved books and reading as a little kid. I was always
Right.
a little bit of a bookworm, I guess. And so got out of school with my liberal arts English degree. Didn't really have much practical application. Didn't didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't really want to jump into grad school because I didn't know what grad school I would go to.
Right.
And so was kind of sitting around, and one of my roommates at the time knew I liked to cook.
Right.
Said, "Hey, I saw this ad in the paper, the Le Chaudière, which was a French restaurant in Reynolda Village, run by French people many years ago." He said, "Le Chaudière is looking for a chef apprentice," and I needed some kind of work, and so I went and applied, got the job, and worked there for a year.
Did not know that. Went there. I think I went
Yeah.
there prom one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Underneath, downstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Le Chaudière means the boiler room.
Right.
Boiler room in French, and it was located in basically what was the boiler room for the Reynolds estate over there in Reynolds
Did not
Village.
know that.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that's where that came from. So I worked there for about a year. Worked at Grayland Conference Center, cooking over there for a little while. Then went to work for the Zevely House,
Right.
which is no longer in business, but for many, many years was where Bernardin's is.
Right.
Down on 4th
Zevely
Street.
House was one of my favorite restaurants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's in a historic Moravian house
Right.
named after Mr. Zevely.
Right.
So ended up working there, and so I was cooking in restaurants here for about 5 years, and then took a break. My grandmother actually wanted to travel around the country, so I took a break, and it was too good an opportunity to pass up. She she probably would have gone, knowing her, she would have gone by herself, but it was better that she went with somebody.
You're there to support.
I was
right.
there. I was there kind of to support her, but also it was a good deal for me.
Not that she's paying for probably most everything either.
No,
Yeah.
not really. I still had to basically pay my way, but it was a cheap and great way
That's awesome.
to see the country. So I did that for several months. So I had to quit my job to do that because that was like a month, 3 or 4 months on the road. And then when I got back, I was like, oh well, I got to figure out what I want to do. And again, another friend said, hey, they're looking to hire people on the copy desk at the paper. Now, for those, if you don't know the copy desk, it's the sort of people who check the paper, they proof the paper. Typically write the headlines, write the captions, do a final read, double check everything. So I went to work on the copy desk at the paper. And I figured, oh well, maybe I ought to use this English degree.
Right.
I'm not sure I want to keep cooking forever as much as I love it. It's restaurant work's hard work, so I didn't know whether I wanted to keep doing that. And I said maybe I should use this English degree. My dad would probably be happy if I did that.
I mean,
yeah. So I gave it a try and liked working at the paper quite a bit, and eventually moved around a couple different jobs. I was an assistant features editor for quite a few years before, and during that time, the food writer position came open. Beth Tartan. If you're of a certain age in Winston-Salem, you probably read Beth Tartan's columns because she was like the food editor for like 40-some years at the paper. Very well known in the community. But she had passed away in '92, I believe. Well, I had just, right after I had started working at the paper. And her job went vacant for a while. They weren't sure what to do because she was so well known. I think everyone was kind of in mourning over her for a while, and rightfully so. And but eventually they asked me if I wanted to do the job, and so I took that in 2000. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the whole
awesome.
story of how I got here.
And so yes, I mean, so I don't know if you know this. I went to school with the High brothers. So Bruce,
right.
Yep. So that, and then who was your publisher?
Well, there's been
back then
several. Joe Goodman.
Okay, Joe Goodman.
No, Joe Goodman.
Joe Doster.
Joe Doster.
Right. So we were friends with the Dosters.
Yeah, Joe Goodman was the managing editor when I got hired and stayed for quite a few years. But Joe Doster was the publisher then.
So then. never knew this as, you know, I met him and didn't know, but Ashley McLeese's dad, the guy that coined, what's his name from Winston Salem, and of course now I'm going to be in big trouble, but Earl the Pearl.
Okay.
He's the one that coined the pearl. And then the other person that I would say is Mr. Oberly. So I played soccer with the Oberly kids.
Right.
So all those are people that you worked with.
Terry Oberly's
Yep.
sports editor for many, many years. Yeah, I know Terry well. Still run into him.
Good guy.
Yeah. He and his wife Sylvia
Yeah.
both worked at the paper together. Sylvia was a city editor for quite a while.
And of course Sylvia did wonders at Habitat.
Yeah, and then went on to work to run Habitat.
Yeah, no, I'm probably of the daughters. Kim was my fullback when I was goalkeeper in Optimus League.
Okay.
And of course, she's a FIFA referee, and I don't really know what a soccer ball looks like anymore. But so she's awesome. But had just great people. You know, I remember the Journal and the Sentinel,
Right.
way back in the day. But you know, so you fall into that position. In the sense, as you were saying, I mean, literally, it was made for you, I think, and I can say that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it kind of, there's no school that you go to be a food writer. There's no degree in food writing, really. Although now a couple culinary classes do, a couple culinary schools do have like a class or two, like in food writing.
Right.
But there's really no degree. So. And so, if you poll people who do what I do, or they tend to have very different backgrounds. But I tend to think that I've got about as good a between majoring in English and then actually going out and cooking for I made my living quite well in the restaurant world. And then working at a paper, learning kind of the newspaper business first, even before I got into food writing. I feel like it turned out pretty well. I got a pretty good solid background for what I'm doing.
Well, the number one ingredients in any recipe is love. And you love what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 minutes with you talking about this food, whatever.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Soho. I'm going to give you grief about, every time I talk to you, I ask you the same question and you laugh at me. But I mean, it's you love what you do. And the other thing is you love for people to accomplish.
Yeah.
You give a good recipe out. I mean, you feel so good about that because that's happening because of you.
Yeah, it's kind of, one thing I really like about the restaurant world is that instant gratification.
Right.
You cook the food, you put it on a plate, people go eat it, and you can kind of see them enjoy it, or they'll the plate comes back clean, right?
Right.
It's instant gratification.
I did my job, yeah.
Yeah, and I sort of get a little bit of that, a little bit of that too, where somebody will write me and say, I made that stew recipe that you had in the paper last week, and it was delicious. My family really enjoyed it. That just makes you feel good.
Well, you're going to tell me what the heck a roux is here in a minute, which I always ask about.
Okay.
We're going to take a break.
Okay.
And then I want to talk about the holidays coming up and, tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff. We're going to be right back with more Camel City Chat and our guest, Michael Hastings.
All right.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time. What the heck's a roux, Michael Hastings?
A roux. A roux is, so it's a French word.
Okay.
Okay.
I
From
guess
French
that.
cooking, R-O-U-X.
All right.
But in France, they don't pronounce that X. So roux. And it's real simple. It is two ingredients, fat and flour. And typically in France, that would be butter and flour. And what you do is so roux is a thickener for a sauce.
So we would use this currently would be for Thanksgiving, correct?
Yeah. And this is really, in American cuisine, you'd be talking gravy. In France, they call it sauce, and the technique is it varies slightly when you get technical about it. But basically, to make a typical sauce in France, you would melt your butter in your pan. You would stir in a little flour till it makes almost a paste. But everything's moistened. You typically use a whisk because you don't want lumps, right? So you whisk those two ingredients together until they're smooth. Depending on what kind of sauce you're making, you may cook that roux. There's blonde roux, which is barely cooked for if you're going to make a white sauce, and then there's brown roux, And we can talk about Cajun and Creole folks will talk about making roux for gumbo and how you get a really dark roux. We can talk about that in a second. But basically, there are different kinds of roux. You may cook it a little bit more or less. But once you've cooked the flour just a tiny bit in that fat, typically you really only need to cook it a minute or so, and not on high heat. Then you whisk in your liquid. So there's white sauce or bechamel, which is basically milk gravy. So for that you would stir in milk or cream or half and half. There is and then there's what the French call velouté, which is more what we would call like a meat gravy. So if you stirred it in chicken broth or beef broth or something like that. Could be vegetable.
See, y'all thought I was kidding about this, didn't you?
Yeah.
No, this is serious stuff, right?
So basically, what the roux does is once you've bound the flour and butter together successfully, they will serve to thicken the sauce without the fat separating. So you're not going to see a layer of grease on top. It's all going to be emulsified and blended together. That's what the roux accomplishes. So there you go. That's basically what a roux is. And then in Cajuns, they take the whole roux idea to the extreme where they cook like if you're making a gumbo, they cook it brown, as brown as they can get it without burning it. And to do that, you have to cook it very slowly. And also in Cajun, they use oil. So a fat's a fat as far as the chemistry of it goes. So it's typically like vegetable oil and flour, and they cook it slowly. Typically in cast iron, the preferred pot of choice down there, and but it can take 25 minutes or more. It takes a lot of patience because it's easy. If you get impatient, you burn it, and then you got to throw it out and start all over. But if you get and it's kind of ironic because you take all this time. The longer you cook this flour, the more its thickening power diminishes over time. So once you get to the end of the 25 minutes and you've done it successfully, you have something that's kind of like a dark chocolate color.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing to behold when if you're into that kind of thing. But for me, it's like and but what it does but it doesn't so much thicken the gumbo as color it and flavor it, because it develops this almost kind of rich, smoky flavor. The cooking the flour to that extent till it turns that dark color changes the flavor of the flour. So you're adding a distinctive flavor to gumbo. So that's basically the whole thing with roux and gumbo, which is totally different from the French perspective on it.
So we're going to air this the Wednesday after Halloween.
Okay.
So I mean that's for you it's like next Wednesday.
Yeah.
So do we have time for my stock for? I mean that's going to be about the 3rd. So you always yell at me because I have you on the week before.
Right.
And
So what you're referring to is making turkey stock before Thanksgiving, and I always tell people go ahead and make that a couple weeks ahead of time, stick it in the freezer.
Right.
But I like to have tons of turkey stock because I like to have tons of gravy. And now you can make gravy with turkey drip.
So don't buy the can.
Turkey drip. No. You can make gravy with turkey drippings and water.
Right.
But if you want super flavorful gravy, make it with the turkey drippings plus homemade turkey stock.
Okay.
You could use a carton of store-bought chicken broth in there with your turkey drippings. A lot of people do that, and that's not a bad option. But if you really want to go all in, make your homemade.
But you're wanting me to keep my vegetables, right? And all that stuff.
What's that?
All my vegetables, you're like telling me I'm cutting up my vegetables, put them in a bag, put them in the freezer and all that. We've talked about that a couple times.
We can do that. We can do that. But for the stock, the reason why I make the stock is I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it for multiple things. So I want to make a big pot of stock.
Okay.
And so I'm going to make. First of all, I like to have a lot of gravy because
it's gravy.
You don't want to run out of gravy
Right.
on Thanksgiving. So we love our gravy. Gravy makes, and we put it on everything.
Right.
So, but also I use it. You use it to moisten your stuffing.
Okay.
Right. You gotta moisten stuffing with broth, and if you're going to get the maximum, ultimate flavor if you use homemade stock. So,
And you also told me.
Yeah.
I learned from you the difference between stuffing and dressing.
Stuffing and dressing, yes. So whether it goes in the bird,
Stuffing.
you stuff the bird, it's stuffing, right? Or dressing, which if you're cooking in a separate pan. But and then the other thing, of course, that I love to have great stock is to make some soup with those turkey leftovers.
So how do I make stock prior to Thanksgiving? Do I buy a turkey now and I just boil it?
Oh, you buy turkey parts.
Okay.
You don't need to buy a whole turkey.
So it's unlike what we've heard in the commercials.
Yeah.
Parts are
Yeah.
parts. We want parts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now you can use any parts. Now to make the best stock, you want to have some bone.
Okay.
Because the cartilage in the bone helps give the body
Right.
to the stock. And but I found really turkey wings
Okay.
are excellent. They're not expensive. They've got plenty of bone, but they also have plenty of meat. Get yourself a package or two I usually buy like 2 packages, so I have like 3 to 5 pounds of meat.
Right.
And I can make like a good, nice gallon of stock out of
So
that.
I put all this stuff into,
Yeah.
put my turkey wings into a tall pot.
Yep.
And then what else do I put? Just water
And then
salt, pepper?
you can just put water, salt, and pepper, or you can put your basic stock vegetables are onion, carrot, celery.
Okay.
So throw an onion in there, throw a carrot or two.
And the big
throw
box
a
will go
stalk
ahead and cut them up for you too if you're lazy.
Yeah, you
Right?
could. Yeah, it doesn't matter what size because you're going to cook that a long time. So it doesn't really matter whether it's cut in big pieces or small pieces, chunks, diced. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And so you can and then cook that. You just bring it to a boil, but immediately you want to turn down the heat. You do not want to boil stock. You want to simmer stock. So gentle, just tiny little bubbles around the edge, and a typical stock, 2.5, 3 hours is decent. If you go but I like to go an extra hour to, extract all the
I
flavor
would
I
never
can.
expect that from you.
And then the one other thing I will say with stock is there, like kind of we were talking about blonde roux and brown roux. There's kind of blonde white stocks and brown stocks too. So if you want, you can take those wings before you throw them in the water.
Oh, throw them in the oven.
Throw them in the oven. Cook them 30 minutes. You don't have to like cook them till they're fully done. You can if you want, but
Do I do them
you
in
want
a
to
big
get them
green
brown
egg and put a little wood in them?
Get them brown.
Yeah.
Yes, you could.
Okay.
You actually could. What I like to do it in the oven though, because what I will do is when I pull them out of the oven, I'll pour some water over that pan and scrape up any little brown
get the good
bits,
stuff.
and that adds color, which is especially if you're making gravy, you want to have that good brown color,
So
right?
hungry.
You
Just
should
keep
have
talking.
eaten first, John.
I'm so hungry.
So it adds color and flavor. So you can do, and so for Thanksgiving, I typically do a brown stock.
It used to be a radio show. It's like right at breakfast time, and I'm running. I didn't get there. Now you're doing this to me. All right. So, did you teach the egg class?
I did.
Okay.
Several times.
So I've never forgiven you for this egg
Yeah,
class.
I know. Yeah.
So at Southern Home and Kitchen, you taught the egg class.
Right. It was a brunch class, how to cook all these brunch dishes with eggs, basically.
No, it's John, eat another egg is what it was. I mean, I love eggs, and I almost don't like eggs after the egg class because it's like, one
You're
more
making
time.
me look bad. You're supposed to like eggs
no.
even more after
You
the
were
class.
so good at that. So I mean, so you've taught classes over
It
at
was a
Soho
lot
too.
of food. It was a lot of food to eat. Yeah.
Right.
I
I love the
taught a lot.
knife class.
Yeah.
The knife classes. I think everyone should have to take the knife class
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah. Which I didn't teach. But
Right.
yeah,
but
it's
no,
good.
I knew that. You taught
good
the
class.
egg class. Did you do Mexican?
I did
Or
a
Indian?
fajita. I did a fajita class.
Did you do the Indian
Sort
food
of
one?
kind of Tex-Mex party class.
Trying to think, because I've taken, I think, 2 classes from you over there. But I know egg was one of them.
Right. I taught a wide variety over 3 or, probably
I'm
over,
so
over
waiting for those
5
classes
years.
to come back.
Yeah. Obviously the pandemic shut those down, and they haven't quite come back yet, but we'll get there.
Right. So, all right, we got a couple things to talk about, and I know we're going to have to take a break here sooner than later. So I want to kind of, before we go to that part, I want to continue down the food path.
Okay.
So, what's the traditional Thanksgiving that you see a lot of people do, or what, obviously I'm not calling the 1-800 Michael Hastings number to get tips on how to cook my turkey, but what are some things that you want to recommend to people? We got like 2 minutes left in this segment, then we'll finish up the next. But
So like dishes to have serve on the table.
I mean, I know you love real relish with like the
Well, to me,
and then pour it in, and then there, and then pour it in.
So to me, it wouldn't be Thanksgiving without some cranberries, some kind of cooked cranberry on there.
Pour it in. Take it
and
makers.
And it can be, I've actually make kind of 3 different. There's the cooked cranberry sauce,
right.
basic. It's really just cranberry, sugar, and water. You cook it until it gets to thick, kind of preserved consistency. That's great.
You're forgetting another ingredient there, but it's okay. Good. Yeah.
No, there's.
You got to put the extra special thing in there.
I never put.
It's
booze
dealing
in my
with family
cranberries.
that you don't see on a regular basis. Yeah. All right.
I may have a glass of wine while I'm cooking,
Okay,
but
good.
I don't
All right.
actually put it in the cranberries. And then there's and then there's like kind of like a raw version of that, which is again sugar, which sometimes I put a little orange in, like a cranberry orange relish. It's kind of a fresh, it's a fresh raw relish. And then there's another version that's also kind of raw that I make that's like a salsa, that's literally like a spicy. It's like a Mexican salsa, except there's no tomatoes in it. There's cranberries. So there's some sugar, but a lot.
What time?
Some
what time I need to be there?
some sugar, but a lot less sugar. Some jalapenos, some onions, some cilantro.
What time?
And we usually eat like early.
Okay.
And so I make all different kinds of. But it wouldn't be Thanksgiving for me without cranberries on the table. And I think also I wouldn't feel right if I didn't have sweet potatoes in some fashion. Whether you want to make a casserole or even a pie for dessert. We usually have them pretty simple, maybe just cooked with a little orange juice and butter kind of thing, or even just baked. Lately, I've been trying to eat healthier. Sweet potatoes are a really healthy vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just serve some baked sweet
purple
potatoes,
North Carolina
you can put some gravy on it, or you can put some butter on it, or something like that. But I wouldn't feel right about Thanksgiving if I didn't have some sweet potatoes, and also if we didn't have pumpkin pie for dessert, I wouldn't feel right about Thanksgiving
Love
either.
pumpkin pie.
So we can have other things. We tend to
Just turkey or turkey and ham?
We typically just have turkey.
That's the way I am. I like that better.
Now, if we ever get back,
Ham's Christmas.
Yeah. Now, if I ever get back to having like a huge crowd, like if I was going to have 20 people for Thanksgiving, then it makes sense to have two just because of oven space and such,
It's the filler.
Yeah.
Honestly, people really want turkey, but
But
I'll have a piece of ham too.
But I like a good ham.
Yeah?
I like a good ham. So
All right, we're gonna take a break, and then I'm gonna touch on what I think is one of your biggest, most important priorities of the year.
okay.
We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat. Welcome back to Camel City Chat. We're here with Michael Hastings, and I'm hungry as all get out. And we've been talking about everything. So teaching cooking classes, how you became involved in cooking. Thank you to your grandmother and your mom. Oh my goodness, or else we know what the exact ingredients are of a crab cake. I know what the heck a roux is, even though I will forget that by the next time. You have something that is the most important thing you do every year. And you're looking at me like, huh?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
How important is it to society in and around the Winston Salem Journal readership, your most important thing that you do, to say who's open on Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It is crazy. It's like a cult, isn't it?
Yeah, people are already asking about it.
I know. I saw you posted
yeah,
it the other day.
It's only October, but people already asking about it.
This is seriously one of the most
yeah.
important things you do all year, isn't it?
Now, I have to say, I can't take full credit for this because this really is something the Sam the Answer Ma'am.
The Straight Answer Ma'am now.
Straight Answer Ma'am columnist puts together, and we work a little together. I usually feed her. I'll say, hey, I hear this restaurant is doing this, is that, and so we collaborate to a certain extent.
But you posted on Facebook just the other day.
It's really yes. I posted just kind of asking to find out because yes, because so many people these days do not cook Thanksgiving dinner. Not only do they not cook it, but they don't go anywhere where someone else is cooking it. So they're buying. More and more people these days just are buying Thanksgiving, and so restaurants are happy to fill
Bibbs did a
great
one when they were open.
Yes.
I think a lot of people now are doing the Fresh Market or Lowe's or one of the places like they're getting everything prepared, and you go pick it up there, and then you just throw it in the oven.
So it's a combination. I think more restaurants are actually open for dining in on Thanksgiving than they used to be. But almost every supermarket will sell you. Every supermarket that has a deli anyway.
Plug and play.
Will sell you a cooked bird with various fixings for a set price.
Right.
And restaurants are doing the same. So even the restaurants that aren't open for things, you mentioned Bibbs. I don't think Bibbs had dine-in, but they would smoke you a turkey and they would sell you a whole turkey and a quart of collard greens and a quart of sweet potatoes or what have you. To go, and someone asked me that. Could you please publish a list of all the places that offer to go Thanksgiving? And I said, well, last year there were so many. The list would be a mile long. We wouldn't have room in the print paper anyway, and so it seemed almost every restaurant. And I think the pandemic has also made takeout has been so popular in the pandemic that. The pandemic has made that an even more appealing a more appealing thing.
And acceptable.
But both appealing from the customer point of view and also from the restaurant point of view. Where restaurants have they've had it rough. They've had it rough the last 18 months, and they're always looking for new ways to make money, as they should. So a takeout Thanksgiving is one way to do that.
I think Adam did an excellent job with Young Cardinal, where he transitioned to where you could get come get meat from him or whatever and all that kind of stuff. I remember Algernon's like, come get something from us over at Zesto's. We got to get rid of some of this meat. Hey, we'll give you a roll of toilet paper. I mean, it's crazy. So, I mean, everybody did something creative.
Yeah, in the beginning of the pandemic, some of them were acting as kind of like grocery stores,
because they had all the meat there for their orders for that week, and then we're shut down.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about something that I alluded to earlier as one of the greatest attributes of you, and that is you cheer and you cry. And we've had Finnegan's is closing today or tomorrow.
Yeah. Now
we've lost some people.
Now it is sad with Finnegan's. However, the good side of that is Finnegan's is going out on its own terms. They're not being forced to shut down.
Correct, right.
The owner just decided.
Kind of like what Mary did. It's like, I'm done.
Yeah. Philip Kirby, everyone knows as Opie, the owner of Finnegan's. He just decided that. He's been doing that restaurant for 15 years. He wants to try something different, and that's great. And kind of Mary Haglund made that kind of decision too. But as you said, there were a lot of people who were forced out of business,
I was real surprised when friends with Jeff McIntosh, loved what Jeff did when he was like, hey, you know what, I got my money or whatever, let's all spend it downtown, etc.
He went on a campaign to spend all his stimulus money in local restaurants, which was great. Yeah.
And then there's the Thai restaurant. Is the Thai restaurant that's on Facebook saying, please come eat at our place? I mean, it's really, some of it's,
You might be thinking about Mystic Ginger, the
Mystic Ginger,
Indian restaurant on
that's it,
4th
thank you,
Street. Yes.
So, it's like, hey, we got to have people come in here.
Yeah.
So what have, and then you turn around, we lose Crafted, but then Adam's coming in with something Pine.
Right.
And so where do you see us going and coming? How many more restaurants you see going out? I mean,
Well, the funny thing is everyone thinks, oh, all these restaurants are closing, but the truth is that pretty much for everyone that closes, a new one is opening.
Is somebody going to go into Finnegan's and you already know that, but we can't tell us?
As far as I know, there's no signed lease, so there's no official tenant there. But I suspect that I don't think it'll stay empty very long. Just like
you're doing a really crappy job of lying to me, but it's okay.
No, I'm being honest. I'm being honest. I have no inside scoop on that. But I mean, look, you talked about Adam Andrews stepping into the crafted space. He made that move within 2 weeks, probably. Right. So it got that real estate got scooped up pretty quickly. So that's what I'm seeing. And at first, the funny thing, when the pandemic started in March and restaurant dining rooms were closed from March to basically Memorial Day or the week before Memorial Day, 2 months. Everything like ground to a halt. Construction ground to a halt, everything, and no one really knew a lot because people didn't know what the future, held. And but then when Cooper said, well, Governor Cooper said, well, dining rooms can reopen with 50% capacities starting around Memorial Day. Then the gears started moving again, and what a lot of people don't realize is, then you start to see new restaurants opening,
right?
And what a lot of people don't realize, throughout the summer and even into the fall, all those restaurant openings were things that really were planned long before the pandemic. It takes a couple of years to open a restaurant. In most cases, a year if you're really got your act together and a well-oiled machine. But so a lot of these. So what you were seeing in the beginning, I understood. A lot of people would ask me, and they would be scratching their head, why is somebody opening a new restaurant
in the
middle of the pandemic? It's because they had already reached the point of no return as far as investing a lot of dough, right? So it made sense. It made more sense to move forward than to go back and abandon the project. So I understood all that and would have to explain it to some people. But anyway. But now we're beyond that, and a lot of you're still seeing some projects that maybe were thought of before the pandemic, but not in serious.
Now we're
not in the serious, not at the point of no return stage. So now people are just saying, hey, I can't put my dreams and my life on hold forever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm going to open a restaurant because this pandemic is going to end sometime, right? And I want to have a restaurant, and people still want they want to eat in restaurants just as much as ever, if not more so. They might be a little hesitant to do so, but if you got a good restaurant, people are going to come find you. They might get takeout. They might eat in. They might want to just only eat on your patio and not in the dining room, for another 6 months or something. But like that. But people want restaurants. So restaurants are going to keep opening. And I think if I went actually in tally, I was saying earlier, maybe for every one that closes, one opens. I think it's actually a lot more opening than closing if you went back and actually counted them.
So it's like the takeover advantage in the sense of like playing when they play football. We're in the positive.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that for some restaurateurs, this has been a time of opportunity where, they for when a restaurant closes, they have gotten a good deal and they've got a good deal on a lease, a good deal, picked up restaurant equipment for cheap, and So just like in the stock market crash, there's always winners and losers kind of thing. So I think for a smart restaurateur who had some cash or had some capital to invest, it's maybe been some good opportunities around, and still are.
We got about 4 minutes. I got 2 questions for you.
Okay.
I'm going to amend one of them because I think you've been here for a while.
Okay.
I always ask questions. You've seen where Winston-Salem was. Where's it going? I'm going to ask it this way.
Okay.
Why are we so fortunate in our city to have so many cool places to eat? What has made it? I mean, we have the restaurants of a much larger city.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think it's it's really the people that the populace supports it. I remember when Whole Foods came here, and at the time there wasn't a Whole Foods in Greensboro. There wasn't even a Whole Foods in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. But they came here. Part of the reason they came here is one of the people working for Whole Foods was a Wake alum. Right. But what the real reason was, that person had insight into the community of Winston-Salem, and they knew that Winston-Salem's food community was savvy enough and hungry enough to support a supermarket like Whole Foods.
So it's definitely the people.
Yeah. So, and I think it's the same thing with the restaurants.
Cool.
And the restaurants that are, we have our share of chains, obviously, but the restaurants that are proliferating are mainly independent, distinctive restaurants run by local folks where the owner is a known commodity and is, on site there in the restaurant, and the people in this area appreciate that, and they will support that if the food's good.
Well, nothing's happening to you, I promise. Okay, but what do you want to be remembered for? And it's the walking out the door, basically. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. But I'm not saying at demise. I'm just saying, if you could go back and look and say, hey, when it's all over with, this is what I'd like to be remembered for. What do you think that'd be?
I like the part of my job where I'm educating and helping people. Right. So we talked about when somebody writes me and said that I made that recipe and my family loved it. Mm-hmm. I can't think of anything better to be remembered for right there. So
Michael wants to be mentioned at every Thanksgiving dinner for helping you. I think that's a great goal because you're a great guy. And want to thank Jeff Smith, Smitty's Notes. Smitty is a sponsor of our little channel here, so we want to say thanks to him. And I want to thank you for being here. Please tell your wife and kids I said hey.
Okay, will do.
But I'll go home and work on my stock right after this. But folks, Michael Hastings, you can find Michael. What the best way to find you is what? Probably Twitter, Facebook.
Facebook or Instagram. You can look up at mhastingswsj, and you can always find my articles at journalnow.com.
Journalnow.com. Michael Hastings. He is our food editor, and we appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll be back next week with more Camel City Chat.